Hello and welcome to Divisive Issues, the foul mouthed spoilful comic book podcast, where two comic fans and two non-comic fans talk about controversial comic books and comic book history. I'm Sly.
I'm Ryan.
I'm Phil.
And I'm Darryl.
So Darryl is
Hi.
the one who picked these comics.
Yeah.
Why'd you pick them? Why? Why'd you do this to us?
I'm a non-comic fan, but I grew up with like certain select few bits of comics. Like we already did Death's Head, which was very formative during my very young years. And then during my teenage years, my mother collected Fantastic Fours because that's her favorite superhero team. And she had me read Volume 3 and specifically Mark Waid's run of Fantastic Four. And I really enjoyed it, and I wanted to revisit it because I feel like this was like a fairly big part of my life, or at least like regarding comics, that this was fairly formative for me and how I saw like a team like the Fantastic Four, whereas I read like nothing else, so I had nothing else to base on. And I was like, oh, this is really cool. Like, I'm surprised more people don't talk about this. I wanted us to visit it too because I feel like a lot of people only know Doctor Doom through the whatever the movies he's in, and Doctor Doom is a really theatrical an arrogant and awesome villain, and they never do him enough justice in any media that adapts him. And I wanted to showcase what I think like is pretty good core Doom.
So we're doing 67 to 70 of Volume 3 and 500 when it goes back to the original numbering of the first series, because that's what I think comics did back then. And they still do. They act like this past thing. They always change the numbering around.
New issue number 1. Then they get to a point where they're like, we'll just go back to the original like issue numbering.
Yeah. They want to have the fresh new issue ones, but they want to have the prestige of being issue 500 too. And it becomes confusing. So can somebody clarify what happened up to this point before we got to this story?
Okay, so the Fantastic Four is a franchise that it was my first Marvel franchise too, but I started from the beginning, and then eventually I hit a point where I was like, this is really boring, and I skipped ahead. And before Mark Waid took over, I've never read that stuff, but from what I've gathered, the Fantastic Four went through like a really dark, crappy 90s period where like I think Reed Richards was dead and Sue Storm had a boob window for a while to symbolize her missing heart or something.
Those are the main comics I read, by the way, so if you fucking know.
Yeah, where it cuts out a hole in their costume to show their cleavage, like what's her name, Power Girl?
Power Girl?
Yeah, exactly. The 4 is like a boob window. I like those comics just because they had Scott Lang in them. So fuck you, Ryan, for trying to shut up. But they're terrible comics. I'm sorry.
So the main thing is what Marvel tried to do is like coming out of the 90s, like after they went bankrupt and everything, the new editor-in-chief, Joe Quesada, tried to like rebrand and
Joe Quesada
tried to rebrand and relaunch a lot of Marvel properties with like really prestige creators. So we talked about Kevin Smith's Daredevil, which was part of this line, and even though we didn't like it still falls under that banner. And also things like putting Grant Morrison on X-Men or like JMS on Spider-Man, and like all these like around this era is like the start of modern Marvel. So most of the time if you're starting these franchises, this is where you would start, like the beginning of the Quesada era. And Mark Waid is one of my favorite writers, and he took over Fantastic Four with issue 60. So this is still very early in his run.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is like his like second or third arc, and he was the first writer in a really long time to go back to like the family, like the core dynamic of the team, where it's like they're a family first and a superhero team second. And he branded it as the Imaginauts because it was all about like the science fiction exploration. Like we talked about it in the Jack Kirby stuff when we did some of like the like This Man, This Monster, of like all about like exploring new terrain and everything.
Yeah, and a lot of the previous issues like before this, when Mark Waid took over, he does a lot of that stuff where it opens with like read in another universe, and like the Thing is making jokes with him about like, what are these bugs, Stretcho?
Yeah, and it's like a return to that Stan Lee dynamic, but with more like modern writing styles and sensibilities.
Mm-hmm.
And
like a lot of dialogue, not a lot of a narration.
Yeah, exactly. And the main plot thing that happened right before Mark Waid took over was the Fantastic Four, Reed and Sue, Mr. and Mrs. Fantastic, I guess, had a son in the 70s, but they just had a daughter.
Was daughter Mark Waid, or was that before?
It was before Mark Waid. Yeah. No, it was right before Mark Waid, where Valeria, their daughter, had to... I never read the story, so I don't know exactly the context, but for some reason, no one could deliver her safely except Doctor Doom, so he
that
delivered
was such
her.
a weird detail they added in. They're like, oh, by the way, remember when Doctor Doom, my arch nemesis, delivered my child?
Yeah, and I never read that stuff, but that's also, like, Doctor Doom named her Valeria, as I think that was, like, part of, like, the bargain, because he was the only one who could, like, do the doctor stuff to save the
got
kid.
to be her godfather.
Because they said, the way they describe it in the comic is, like, when people with radioactive bodies try to have kids, they miscarry or something.
Yeah, and in the 80s, they had tried to conceive a second child, and Sue miscarried. And so I assume that when they tried again, they took extra precautions, and Dr. Doom was there. But he names her Valeria, and this story kind of picks up with us learning about who Valeria was and why he picked that name.
Old Valeria.
Yeah, so that's why I assumed it was later to the run than it was, because Valeria is like pretty big in the modern comics, but I always read it and I'm like, where the fuck did you come from? Like, I never read a single comic with you in it.
I don't know when she got born, but I think it was pretty recently before this.
Yeah, so but there was some history before this, but it wasn't Mark Waid's history. Mark Waid came in.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so that's good to know. Okay.
Yeah, so her being born, everything happened already.
I've heard so many of these names before, because you guys, whenever I heard you guys talking about comics, even back in college, it was always like Mark Waid, Joe Quesada, and I was looking. So I've started to try to look at the credits in comics and to see if I recognize a lot of the names. And I like seeing Mark Waid, writer, blah blah blah, Joe Quesada, editor in chief, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, unforgettable. That's their job.
And one thing I also want to point out is it wasn't just Mark Waid's run. This is also Mark Waringo's run, and Mark Waringo was like a really, really popular and iconic artist at the time, but he passed away really young. So he's like one of these like iconic early 2000s artists that like wasn't around for that long, but most of the things he touched were like definitive character designs of the time. And just like to point
cool.
that out.
His art's interesting. It's like it's this weird like
Disney.
melding of like cartoonish but not too cartoonish type of a style.
It does feel very. Disney's the best way to put it. I think it's kind of perfect for the Fantastic Four. At least the way they are now. Post I think Stanley and Jack Kirby are my favorite like creative team on Fantastic Four. But I think past that era, the more modern like family oriented Fantastic Four, I think they're perfect because it's very like Disney. It's basically Incredibles. Like
It is
like,
very Incredibles.
Pixar-esque.
Yeah, Pixar-esque, exactly.
And which is funny because the Incredibles are basically just Fantastic Four anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So issue 67 opens with a narration about Dr. Doom. He's not in his full armor. He has like a Phantom of the Opera mask on almost.
Yeah.
And he's with a fortune teller, and he has a locket with a beautiful woman and it looks like a really old school locket, and he's looking for this woman he calls Valeria. Dr. Doom is in this like small town in Georgia that's known for having a bunch of fake like fortune tellers. And he's just going from fortune teller to fortune teller,
Expositing for us.
Yeah, expositing, trying to track down this woman that her trail ends here. And we keep getting all these flashbacks of a young Dr. Doom before he was all like deformed in his home country of Latveria. And they talk about how he was part of a gypsy tribe that was like feared in their area and run out of town. And Valeria was like the only one that he like got along with and understood him. And it's a very like falling in love montage kind of scene. And it's just him like walking around and doing his own magic as well. Like he's doing tarot card readings, and he says like, I hate that I have to go to these like fake fortune tellers, but this is where the trail leads. And then it recaps his origin that she said, you're going too far away from your roots. All these Americans want you to come to their schools. You have to choose between your high science or me. And he leaves her and goes to America and meets Reed Richards, and the machine blows up in his face and he becomes the evil Dr. Doom.
He also says in this flashback that like Reed Richards sabotaged his experiment and deformed him, and I was like, what?
That's Dr. Doom's perspective. That's Dr. Doom as an untrustworthy narrator. Like,
yeah, I know. I figured it later on, but I'm like, is this like a retcon or?
Well, part of like the lore is Reed Richards says, your math is wrong. And Doctor Doom is so convinced that he's smarter than Reed Richards that he refuses to believe it. And then when the machine blows up, the only explanation he can believe is that Reed sabotaged it.
Right.
So now he finally finds a psychic that's actually a real psychic.
A little important thing to know about the story is everyone's getting some things right when they're talking about it. Like they know like Valeria's name, or they're able to guess that like that he was in love with this girl that he had to like make a choice between. So they're technically right, and he keeps blowing everyone off as like they're so far beneath Doom that it doesn't matter.
I thought that, from what I interpret, that was supposed to be context clues, and also like they say like, that's your mother, right? I could see because of the eyes, and like they make you think it's a gypsy, but it's not. And like he talks to him, and then he's like, "No, you're a charlatan." Like I think just to a bait and switch. Like they use context clues generally, and now Doom is just realizes through the conversation that they're charlatans, that they don't have any powers whatsoever.
I think I could see it both ways. I took it as they're charlatans, but that's. It also fits with Doctor Doom to be like, you don't know what you're doing. Even
and this is also Doctor Doom's perspective in a lot of the story. Like, they don't illustrate like how much of a hypocrite Doctor Doom is. Like, it's pretty obvious if you know him. Most of the stuff is bullshit, but
So then he finally finds this one psychic who has him look in a crystal ball, and it actually reveals the house that she's staying at. And he's like, "What?" She says, "We're not all posers, The woman you seek is there, just down the street. And Victor, she's waiting for you." So he goes there, and he sees this older woman that's Valeria, and he's like, "I've changed so much. I mean you no harm." And she's been hiding from him intentionally this whole time.
I do want to include the fact that the setup of the story, he says, "I made a fateful decision when I was younger, and it set the course of my life that way." Like even when someone's reading his palm, like they're like, "Your lifeline changed when you were young." And so what they're saying is like he chose like Ryan said earlier, he chose science over his homeland and Valeria. And so they're setting it up that he wants to go back and change that choice and to go make the other decision.
Yeah. So he gives her the locket, and she opens it, she goes, "Dear God, were we ever that young?" And he's like, "Yes, but only one of us was foolish. I love you. Please come back to me." And she's like, "To who? The boy I fell in love with doesn't exist anymore." And they argue back and forth a little bit where he's like, "I want to make that choice again. I want to choose again." And she says, I can't help you, Victor. The love I had for you is gone." And he takes off his mask, and we don't see him, but it's the deformed.
He's
Dr.
silhouetted
Doom
in
face.
darkness. It's one of the classic like,
exactly.
and they never show you the scars.
Yeah, but she still looks him in the eyes, and he says, "That's how I know that you're still in love with me, because everyone else is repulsed by me, but you still see the person that you love. And you no longer need to be ruled by fear. We can be together. I intentionally came here without my armor to show you that I'm rejecting science, and that like I'm going back to the the person I will if you will be the one to save me."
He opens up the music box that they made together in the first montage.
Yeah. Says, "I give you my most solemn word of honor, Valeria. Your love will make me a changed man." And she hesitates, and she's like, "Oh, we have so much to discuss." And he says, "Understood. Just tell me that there's a chance for us." And she says, "Certainly," and takes his hand. And then he says, "Excellent." And the locket,
such a dick move.
The locket like explodes in this green hellfire. And she says, "What's happening?" as her whole body gets covered in runes. And he's like, "My life is changing," as she screams on the floor. "When I was young, I made a fateful choice. I chose science over sorcery, and I wanted to choose again." And he reveals that he made a pact with demons that he would become the ultimate sorcerer if he sacrificed something that meant a lot to him. So as he's expositing this, he says, "Farewell, my love," and she burns up into a skeleton.
No, not just that, her flesh
skin
rips off of her and becomes his new armor.
Yeah.
He has flesh armor now.
He says, "I will miss you more than you will ever imagine." And now he has this like Doctor Doom flesh armor, and he's like, "And I will always hold you close to me."
He's such an asshole too, because he comes back to his ex-girlfriend after like 40 years, and he's like, "You're the only thing I really want. Like, you're the most important thing I can kill to make the demons happy."
Yeah.
And like it's because they spent, and that's the end of the issue. So because they spent the entire issue, like it's like, is he really going to be a changed man? Is like, because he seems pretty genuine about it, and then he's just like, "Nah, fuck you, you're dead."
No, it's also this thing that he keeps doing where he's like, it's not the spirit of the words he says, it's like the exact words, like, "I will be changed." I
Yeah.
was. It's like
Yeah.
so he keeps doing this throughout the whole thing, and I guess that must be part of his thing, where he's like, I always honor my promises, but like he doesn't.
Yeah.
He just it's like only the literal words. He's like a fucking genie that's like out to trick you.
I like when you look back through it, like there's that one point where he's divining tarot cards in his room, and like the entire page is textless, but it shows you outside of the room is a bunch of electronics that are just scattered along the floor, because since he's rejecting science and technology, he's trying to go back to his foundation, like his gypsy roots of just trying to use sorcery and magic to find out stuff. And it's cool. Again, like I've talked at length about how I dislike a lot of overwrought text, and that's my big problem with a lot of old comics is there's so many words where it's like, this is a completely textless scene, and it conveys everything it needs to without going overboard, without being like, I needed to discard like the TV because it reminded me of technology.
I agree.
Yeah.
It's show instead of tell.
Yeah, and the one thing I want to say about Mark Waid that the reason why I think he's one of like the biggest like masters of the comic book craft is because he does such a good job at balancing the overarching story but also telling a full story in one issue. Like this is setting up like Doctor Doom's sorcery and all this stuff, but you feel at the end of this like that is like a full story right there, where it goes through their whole backstory, it goes through their whole relationship, and then it resolves everything. And like a lot of writers write just like, you could tell that this is written to be read in 6 issues and not just one, and some only write in one. Like Stan Lee, mostly it's beginning and end with like subplots in the background, but I feel like Mark Waid balances them really, really well here.
So the next issue opens up with introducing us to the Fantastic Four and their shenanigans, where
in this run specifically, this is like missing context. I also like that I get to be this person now where I'm like, wait, hold on guys, there's missing context. Johnny Storm has been given, he's the head of their like finances and stuff, and so if the thing needs any money, which is what it opens with, he has to come to Johnny to ask for it. It's like, hey, I want to buy like new pants, or we need a new car. And Johnny and the Thing have a very like almost aggressive relationship with how much they make fun of each other.
like Johnny won't give him money for like the week, and so the Thing ends up dropping a giant water balloon on him.
Like a giant. When we say giant, we mean like the size of like a meteor.
Yeah, and then we switch to introducing us to Mr. Fantastic and
Sue Storm.
And
Invisible Woman.
They're in another dimension where everyone has 3 eyes and 3 arms, and they speak trinary code. So Reed Richards is like 0, 1, 2, 2, 1, 2.
And all the trees are purple, and like colors are trippy.
And they're here for like some photon batteries that they can advance science with.
Yeah, this is clearly like the Imaginauts thing Ryan was alluding to earlier, where it's like he wants to go back to the sci-fi roots of just like every day they're in a new dimension.
Yeah, it's also like if you like, it reminded me a lot of like if you ever watch Rick and Morty. Like every episode they just start out like in another dimension, and they're just doing whatever shenanigans, like very much like that. But they also set up a lot of. This is one of the things that irked me, I think, is how much they set up the science versus magic like fight. Is like. Mm-hmm. They start talking while they're sailing around in Sue Storm's telepathy. Like, she says something about magic, and he's like, I don't believe in magic. And then they have this whole argument where she's like, oh, come on. You're
being close-minded. You've seen sorcery. No, I've seen a science I haven't bothered to explore. She says, not everything can be explained by science. And he says, bite your tongue.
I'm curious, Ryan. You know, Reed Richards more than I did. Was this like? It doesn't seem out of character for him, but like, is this a thing that Reed Richards had? Like, he sees magic stuff, and he's like, this has to be a scientific reason for this.
Reed is always trying to scientifically explain everything. Like I can't think of a single Fantastic Four story that isn't. Well, I won't get ahead of myself.
I would say like it doesn't seem that far fetched for like because I can't think of a context where he did this before. But it doesn't seem that far-fetched that he will be... he's so scientific as a character, it won't be that far-fetched that he would assume there must be something that he can figure out eventually.
Yeah, I mean, this is pretty in character.
Especially because the Fantastic Four dynamic, I feel like, hinges upon Reed coming up with a problem, like a solution to solve a problem, where it's like, oh, you know, if we do this, then this problem gets solved. Like, he's always the thinking man.
It seems like I understand that. Like, I like... You know, things have to make sense, and you're trying to make like analyze and make sense of things. But can't it just be that then you figure out the rules of magic? Like, it's weird that you live in a world where you hang out with Doctor Strange, and you're like, but magic's not real. Like,
Well, no, but it's like the same thing like when the first Thor movie came out. I remember you saying that because you saw it before me, that you really liked it because it wasn't like just this like magical god thing. It was they were just like a super scientist, like sciencey race that we didn't understand yet.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing that in Marvel Comics it's not that. There's a clear distinction between magic and science. So like in movies they had it so if you don't know enough science you become it's like magic to everyone else. Well, here it is like there's something that we will never understand because he's not magic, and there's a clear division between magic and science.
And like think about like the Doctor Strange ones we've done, like when it's supposed to be like mind-blowing trippy, where like it doesn't make sense. It like the whole thing is like only the best sorcerers aren't driven mad by this world. Like and in Marvel it's very clearly that like magic and science are different things.
Yeah, I feel like there's so many wizards in the Marvel universe that at some point you're like, I guess the magic has to be real. Like,
Well, Reed's a big thing too, which the story explores, is Reed's arrogant, just like Doom is.
Yeah.
Like they're almost two sides of the same coin in that they're very vain and they're very like they think they're the best. It's just that Doom uses his stuff for very selfish reasons, whereas Reed doesn't.
Like he's willing to wear his ex-girlfriend's skin.
Exactly.
Like he's like complete. Like that's.
Yeah,
that's pretty far. But okay, so
which is why Doom's great.
Yeah,
it's what other villains are like. I have to like hook up with a girl, and then later on in life, you're like, I better go find them again and kill them.
Not just kill them. I'm gonna go wear their skin so hell is happy.
But like, there's something about like when Doctor Doom does it. It's not like it doesn't feel as like edgelordy as like other comics we've covered where people wear each other's skin. But like, it's more like
I think part of it's
so
because
diabolical.
He doesn't do it because he's like, this would be like funny if it happened. Like he's not evil.
It's
for
not
evil's
cruelty.
sake. Yeah, he's like, I need to expand my power,
Yeah.
and this is the place I've come to. It's like, so I'll do it.
If Mark Waid did this, it'll be mean-spirited. It'll be just make the reader feel bad. Like the character will turn to the reader and say, "Fuck you! I'm going to look at her skin, you motherfucker."
Yeah.
I've always liked the lotion you use as he puts on his skin. So we cut to New Adelan, which is the fucking I don't remember the name of the team. The Inhumans on the moon,
which was so good because like when I was reading this, I had I don't remember them, so I had no idea who they were this time. And then I see, I'm like, oh my god, Medusa! Oh Jesus!
Yeah, and they're babysitting the Reed and Sue's kids for whatever reason.
Franklin and
They put them on the moon for babysitting. I guess that's safe.
I mean, their house is getting blown up by supervillains all the time. I feel like the moon is a good place.
Yeah, when I said I guess that's safe, I'm like, I guess like for this world, I guess that's
right after Mark Waid's run. CPS comes and tries to take the kids away because they're like, you can't just bring them to the moon and always have supervillains like destroy them.
Yeah.
We have some little story here where Johnny Storm's trying to get back at the thing, and Reed Richards like, I'll help you. And then in the kitchen, here's where we get a lot of our backstory about Valeria, the child. And the Thing and Sue Storm are hanging out, and
everyone's trying to get Valeria to say her first words.
Yeah, that's
like
important.
every scene she's in. Even
on the moon, they're like the Inhumans are like trying to get her to say her first word, and they're basically giving us backstory here on how Dr. Doom had to deliver her, and but they're like, she's safe though, and we won't ever let him get near her again. And she's playing with some building blocks, and in the face of the block, fucking Dr. Doom is like, "Hello, I'm Victor Von Doom."
Basically, she's like sleeper agent from Battlestar Galactica. This is like the music.
I love it because the next scene is Doom standing inside a pentagram with candles around it, with like human hands holding up the candles, and it's just a giant baby face that he's expositing to.
So much exposition to this baby who cannot speak English, and he's like, "Once before, years ago, your father was called upon," and he basically is expositing to us and to Valeria about how part of his elaborate scheme of revenge has been the day he delivered her, he put a spell on her and basically made her his familiar.
Yeah, and so now she can see through her and like talk to her.
He can do sorcery through this baby. What's another fucking like thing that he always talks about his honor, it's so like hypocritical, is like he's like, I said I wouldn't harm you, and that's true, but I'm gonna kill your whole family. I think anyone you asked, would that be considered harming me if you killed my family? Yes, I think yes.
It's pretty obvious that he's a hypocrite. Like,
it's again that like the monkey's paw wishes or like the genie stuff, where you're like, I guess if you argue it a certain way, like you're not physically harming the baby. But yeah, he says like, yeah, I'm gonna kill your family. So anyway, and Then, while Reed's hanging out in the lab trying to use his thing-punishing gun, it basically starts, like, hellfire starts coming out of the gun, and it grabs... They're trying to teleport his son away, Franklin, to the moon for safety, while they figure out...
The thing is G's trying to grab Franklin, so they're like, we gotta get Franklin out of here, so they try to teleport him to the moon.
And as he's jumping through the teleporter... the teleporting location changes from the moon to hell.
Yeah, literally. Like,
literally
we
hell.
might think we're joking. It is literally hell.
Literally hell. And at the same time, in the kitchen, they're like, oh, she's about to say her first word. Can you say mama? Can you say dada? And she goes, doom.
Yeah, Valeria says doom.
And then, so the issue ends with her saying doom, Franklin jumping through the portal, and Reed's trying to stop him at the last second, and you see him being grabbed by demons in hell.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's how the issue ends. I'm like, that's a pretty cool way to end. Really, I think it is.
The issues do have a good momentum going.
And even like the way that they do, like, I'm just gonna always jerk off Mark Waid because I love him so much. But like the way like they open as like the issue opens with the montage of like, here's Johnny and Ben doing shenanigans, here's Reed and Sue exploring this place, and they like talk about magic and technology here. Here's the kids on the moon, just like, and it looks like they're just picking them up from their babysitter. But then by the end of the issue, he's trying to send him back to the moon. Where like if those 2 pages weren't there, I'm sure, Phil, you would have been like, why the fuck is he sending this kid to the moon?
Yeah. I do think that the issues are structured very well. In that, like you guys said before, best, I think that this issue is a concise story. Like, I could read this and be like, I get it. And it had a beginning, middle, and end. And I'm interested to read more, you know?
Which is impressive because it's a very... Fantastic Four is pretty continuity heavy.
Yeah, and like, again, I want to stress how great it is that Mark Waid, like, how cool that he doesn't use narration boxes at all. Everything, because I just realized even the Doom exposition stuff is him talking to us. That all of it's just like interpersonal. It's all dialogue based.
Yeah.
All right, so we should mention, by the way, that this story is called Unthinkable.
Yeah.
I guess because it's unthinkable that Doom would have magic powers? Or
yeah, but it's also like what's happening in the Fantastic Four. And also Reed having to think about things that are unthinkable.
Oh, okay. That would make the most sense. Okay, so the sun's now in hell, so Johnny Storm tries to fight through the portal and try to save him, but the demons spit hellfire at him. And it burns his leg, and he's like, "Oh, wow! I haven't been burned since we first got our powers."
Yeah, and he's freaking out while he's doing that too, because clearly, you know, if you're a fire dude, you're not used to feeling heat,
being on fire.
Yeah.
Sue and the Thing show up with Valeria, and they're like, "What's happening?" And the control panels melted, so now they can't get Franklin out anymore.
And the energy is just this like hellfire. This hell energy is just like floating around in like a swirl around the room.
Yeah, and destroying all of Reed's equipment, and there's smoke everywhere.
It's funny because they called, like, this is the Doctor Doom comic, and they said Doom, but I kept thinking of Doom the video game because of like how much I'm like, this is
Hell?
like what happens. You go to hell, and hell comes on Earth, and you're like everything's melting and demons. I'm like, this is, you know, I just want to see one of them pull out a shotgun and go in there.
But so then Valeria, Reed notices that Valeria has brown eyes or reddish eyes.
Red eyes, yeah.
Instead of blue, so he's like, Doom, it must be my daughter.
He grabs her and starts shaking her, going, "Get out, Victor! Leave my family alone!"
Like Doom starts talking immediately. He's just like, shoot enough Richards right through Valeria. It'd be funny if Doom just kept acting evil through Valeria, and everyone thought he was crazy. But...
Well, the thing that I like about this a lot is Reed is like kind of losing it. He's like, "Don't hide behind my children, you coward! Where are you? Show yourself!"
And everyone's like grabbing Reed, like, "Stop shaking your goddamn baby!"
Yeah, and Ben's like, "Yo, get a grip. We'll fix this." And like Reed is always so like cold and calculated, and I like that as soon as his kids were in danger, he like loses it.
Mm-hmm. Which is usually the case, I feel, is
Yeah.
Reed's like, oh, he's fine, and then his kids are in danger, and because he blames himself for them being in danger, he starts to really lose control.
Not just blames himself, it is his fault. I feel like how often superheroes get their families killed and stuff, it's like, you have to take some responsibility for that.
Yeah.
Well, it's hard because you either, like, you see them where they're on the moon their whole life.
Yeah. I mean, it's like Jack Bauer, you know? I also want to say the art, I think, is pretty cool where, like, when Doom starts talking through the baby, Valeria, and he goes, "Soon enough, Richards," you see, like, it starts zooming in on her eyes, and you can see Doom in her eyes, and the Doom in her eyes is saying "soon enough," but you know it's like the baby saying it.
Yeah.
I just think it's a cool artifact.
Yes. So then they cut to Doom in his pentagram, and he's talking to 3D music, giving him his power, and they're eating human flesh. And I find it funny because we talk about how it looks like Pixar, but like it's very cutesy art style, but the subject matter is extremely dark. Like
Yeah, like the
flesh.
demons themselves look kind of silly.
Yeah, like they're all different colors, pink and blues and yellows, like very cartoony colors. But again, Doom is wearing flesh armor. They're eating human flesh as they're talking to him, and like and the whole art style is very cartoony. It's one of those weird things in comics where they can't get the tone right, but like it still works overall.
It does.
The thing that I like about this conversation is the demons are like, don't forget that you couldn't have done any of this without us. And Doom's like, choose your words carefully, demon. Victor Von Doom bows before no other. I acknowledge you, yes, as allies, not masters. And he's talking to like the Lords of Hell.
And they're like, okay.
And they gave him his power. They're like...
And they laugh a little. Like, one of them is snickering. They're like, okay, yeah. We're from hell, so.
Yeah, and they do eventually find, the 3 demons eventually find Franklin Hell and take him. And the rest of the team is speeding off to go save him in their fantastic car. In the meantime, since Doom has magic powers, Ben decides to call up Doctor Strange. And Doctor Strange is like, "Oh, I can't come, sorry." And it turns out he's possessed. He's being swarmed by demons, and the demons have a sneak attack on him.
He says like, "Oh, I'm not interested. Like, I don't care what Doctor Doom's doing." And then he says like, "But potentially he could have taken me surprise with a demonic assault." And then it zooms out, and there's just demons holding up the phone and like fucking him.
Yeah, like little impish demons, little, like not like menacing demons, like little, like really tiny, like goofy
imps,
demons.
Like imps. They like imps. Yeah.
Which is one of the weird things when I was reading back through this, because like when I first read this, I had no idea what Doctor Strange even was outside of magic, dude, whatever. But I always thought like science could beat magic when I first read Marvel and stuff, because I hadn't read any like cosmic fights or any time where magic was necessary, because again, it's like Reed Richards solves it through science. And it was one of the weird things, like reading this and being like, I don't think Doctor Strange would fall to Doctor Doom.
But he's not falling to Doctor Doom. He's falling to hell.
And also, like they say, like later on, since he snuck like we saw that Doctor Strange, because he gets snuck attacked by a guy who sneaks in through his window with a dagger called Silver Dagger. He probably gets snuck attacked by Doctor Doom. But I will say, it's funny. It is funny though that Doctor Doom's plan hinges on Reed Richards not stopping by Doctor Strange's house first, because his entire plan completely unfolds if we just visit Doctor Strange.
But that's the beauty, is Doom knows Reed. He's like, I know you're gonna come to Latveria to come fight
and
me.
also Reed won't like get Doctor Strange's help, and even Ben's like, I called Doctor Strange, and he's like, why, magic's not even real? And he's like,
yeah, he keeps saying it. They go as the issues go on, they get thicker and thicker on like you have to give up on science and go magic. Like magic's real.
But even if like Reed doesn't accept Doctor Strange knows actual magic, he knows Doctor Strange can fucking warp reality and stuff. He knows whatever science he has.
But so Reed brings out all his like big science weapons, and he's like, this is our family. We don't need anybody's help. I can beat this. We've beaten Doctor Doom before.
And Reed Richards says Victor's behavior is unthinkable.
Name drop. It sucks now.
Why is he coming after us with these unscientific means? Again, if he's using magic and you think magic is science, is this not scientific? Like
Well, it's because he hasn't used stuff like this before. Like they were both men of science, Phil. Why would he stoop to this level?
But Ben even points out, like he mentions this old bit of continuity that's weird, where he's like, you remember Franklin's nanny was a witch, right? And Reed's like, I don't know what you're talking about. But like that was a thing.
What's interesting,
that was a thing.
I read some of Waid's run, like to build up to this, and he actually references stuff constantly of the old continuity, which I thought was really cool, because it gives you like insight into them being like, oh, we've done this before. Like before, there are these people trying to trick Johnny. Is like, well, I've dealt with Skrulls before. And there was one other thing too, where Sue suggested something, and he had to make sure that she wasn't being mind controlled by the puppet master. And it's just like, it's cute little stuff to be like, there's been more to this world than just like what's going on right now in just this arc.
I think that's important for world building and all.
I will say that's why I think Mark Waid is a great writer.
Did you almost say Mark Millar? No,
sorry.
You dare?
Take it back.
He's a good side.
Spit that out of your mouth. Those words.
Mark Waid. The writers I really love are usually the writers. You could tell they know all this history. Like they're not going to weave it all like into the plot, so it demands you have to know everything. But you could tell this guy acknowledges that these characters have this long history. They acknowledge like Waid acknowledges that Franklin had a nanny that was a witch. It's just that Reed is being a stubborn asshole. Like, he acknowledges that it's not a continuity error. It's a part of Waid knows these characters, and he's interweaving these aspects into the plot.
And it never feels like shoehorned just to have a bunch of editorial notes, and it never gets in the way of the story.
Yeah, and it's not showing off like James Robinson does. James Robinson has characters show up and they explain all their character history, and it's like showing off, like, I know so much history. Like, Waid brings it up when it's relevant. Like, it's relevant that Reed is being so stubborn because he has all these magic elements in his past. Mm-hmm. But it's only a brief thing just to mention, like, characters being like Ben being like, Reed, you know all this stuff. Like, we have examples here. And Reed's like, fuck you, I don't know this stuff. I'm a smart science man.
Because when a comic book writer does it well, I think it's like this, where you're like, oh, that's really interesting. I'd be interested to read that whenever I'm done with this, instead of like a bad writer that brings up continuity where like, I guess I have to go on Wikipedia right now because I don't know what the fuck's going on.
It also rewards you just for knowing your history, where you're like, obviously, like, it feels cool when it's brought up. Like, come on, the nanny was rich.
I was gonna bitch because we bitched about the one end. I was gonna bitch about the other end where they don't know anything about history. They don't really care about anything about history, like Bendis, and they'll punish you if you actually know history.
That's actually a big deal.
Yeah. So the Fantastic Car gets crashed by Doom, and they have their
They fly into a no science or like bubble, and I'm like, God damn! It's like a magic aura around Latveria that kills science.
It's like an anti-magic field in D&D, except anti-science field.
Anti-science field doesn't make sense. Okay, fuck you.
Maybe it's like anti-electronics, like circuit boards.
No, it's not though, because when fire doesn't work right here, Johnny Storm's like, for some reason the fire doesn't work.
Their powers are created by cosmic radiation, which is science.
That's just so dumb because then like. How do you breathe? How does gravity work? Like,
that's all science.
How does magic work? The thing is, it's magic. Like magic. I don't know how to explain shit. Like, how does magic work in the first place? Can you add logical rules to magic?
Reed Richards, you gotta let it go.
I can't let it go. I can't.
It's unthinkable for me.
The team gets their ass kicked by Dr. Doom. He basically makes them like fight each other. Like, they think they're winning, but turns out they're actually beating up Reed, not Dr. Doom.
Oh yeah, really cool. That was really cool use of magic. Where as the thing's about to punch Dr. Doom, he he teleports into Reed Richards' spot and puts him there, so he gets punched in the face.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So then, there's certain Reed saying, "I think it's something that could defeat him," and Reed's like, "No, it's unthinkable." No, he doesn't say that. And then this shit ends with Reed trying to think of a way to beat Doom.
They do say here, like, our like Sue Storm's powers aren't working right either because of the anti-science field. And then Dr. Doom even says, like, come on, bring your science to fight me. Like, use your vaunted scientific brilliance.
I suppose the funny thing about Doom is like Doom like mocks Reed for all things he does. Like Doom mocks Reed saying, "You're too arrogant to admit when you don't know something. You're too dumb to acknowledge the power of magic," when he didn't acknowledge the power of magic for decades.
Doom is like the most projected.
Yeah.
Which is why it's great too, because he's like, he says it with such like such a flaunt, and he says it with such like verbosity that he's so fun to just watch be an asshole.
Zero self-reflection.
He says it with like the conviction like other writers will use for telling the audience something like about a character. Mm-hmm. Like if Mark Millar wrote this, Reed really would be this piece of shit that Doom accuses him of. But this is Doom saying it. It is supposed to be ironic that Doom is accusing Reed of all these things.
If Mark Millar wrote it, Valeria would be half of Doom's child.
Yeah, I'll get that. So then he teleports Valeria over to him, and he's like, I got her, you guys surrender to me, or else I have your baby. And Reed's like, okay, you win, we can't beat you. Doom promises, like, I won't hurt you. What was he promised exactly? That he won't hurt them, I think. He promised that to Valeria.
Yeah, he said, I'm not gonna hurt you.
Oh, also part of the while they're fighting, when he reads like, "I have a big science gun, don't worry," and Doctor turns it into a bunch of fingers and eyeballs.
Yeah, he turns it into flesh.
Also, great line here where Reed's fighting and he's like, "The science does still work here. We can hear sound. Science still operates. It just has to try harder." I'm like, what does that mean? The science has to try harder here.
And as they're fighting, Doom summons a bunch of golems to beat the thing down because he's like using brute force against things brute force, and they're just, as they're walloping him, they're breaking off like pieces of his rock exterior, and they can't win. So Doom, holding Valeria, says, listen, he makes a portal and shows Franklin and Helen. He's like, listen, you guys surrender and I'll let your child go. And so so they decide, like, Reed finally gives up and he surrenders
because he says on that you have the Solemn Word of Doom, who always honors his promises.
But he doesn't even monkey paw. He doesn't even monkey paw Genie that. He keeps holding Valeria after the surrender. Like, because he
lets her go.
He lets
first.
Franklin go.
No. He says, "I'll let your child go," and then it shows him dropping Valeria to the ground, and then like he closes the portal with Franklin. And he's like, "Bargain upheld."
Oh yeah, he does.
Yeah, and then later on he just holds her because who else is gonna hold her?
One other continuity note. Those golems that Darryl mentioned are actually Doctor Strange villains. They're the mindless ones from Dormammu's Dark Dimension.
Oh, yeah, that's cool.
And it's just they're from the Stan Lee, Steve Ditko, Doctor Strange, and like those little things that like if you know magic in the Marvel universe, that's really cool. Otherwise, they're just golems. It's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So then he takes him Fantastic Four to a stronghold. He has Ben just gets beaten the shit out of him by the
they're all being tortured, and Ben is literally just hang upside down by magic, and the golems sit there all day and punch him.
Yeah, there's like pools of blood on the ground and teeth. Ugh.
Yeah, and he swaps everyone's powers around, so now Sue is constantly on fire.
She's on fire, but not like in like a Johnny Storm, like cool way. She's like on fire.
Yeah.
She's like screaming agony, and like Doom's holding Valeria, saying, "Do you want to hold your mommy? Too bad, she's buried alive." Haha. Like she's taunting Valeria, and so then he goes to Reed and exposits saying, "You're a piece of shit."
Wait, you forgot that Johnny Storm has stretchy powers,
and he's being stretched
so he's being stretched to death. Like, there's like poles going through him.
Poles. All different poles going right through Johnny Storm. But he goes to Reed, and Reed's like just in the box, and he's like saying, "You have to watch all your friends suffer because you're a piece of shit. You want to admit that your science has failed." So now I'll leave you in this place full of all these magic books, and you'll know you never figure it out.
I love that.
He tells him that you can figure it out. Like you can learn magic on your own, but you have to accept magic in order to learn how to get out of there and stuff.
So he leaves him in literally a magic library that has all the books. It's like everything I learned from these books. So like if you want, I'll give you a chance to learn magic and come fight me.
And the way Waringo shows the passage of time, I really like it, where Reed's walking around the library with a candle, and then he's like reading a book and reading a scroll and reading another book and then another book, and
the candle's going down.
The candle is just like dissolving and melting, and like that's just, to me, it's a very effective way on another almost textless page of showing that he's been here for a long ass time.
Yeah,
I love what Reed says here. He goes, "He knows. That's why he put me in here. He knows." I thought he was gonna say like, "I can't read" or something, because I'm like, the book should explain it, but he says, "I can't understand any of this."
Yeah, and so as he's like defeated, the flame of the candle forms text saying, "Knowledge isn't everything. To be continued, or to be concluded rather, in issue 500."
Yeah. And real quick before we jump to that, I just want to read this little dialogue from Doom because I talk about how much I love his haughty voice. But he says to this when he's talking to Reed Richards through like this little tiny window in the door. He says, "Your problem, Richards, is your unquenchable vanity. You are the center of your universe. In your unmitigated arrogance, you carry around an eternal sense of entitlement that is wholly undeserved, and yet so fundamental to your sense of self that you're constantly willing to put everyone around you at risk to attain whatever goals strike your fancy."
This is a man who, in the first issue, called himself God and wore someone else's skin to achieve his own goals.
He's talking about entitlement. He made himself a king.
Yeah. So fine with you.
Okay, so there's the flame on the ground that says knowledge isn't everything, and what happens, a bunch of books start swirling around, and Doctor Strange starts pulling, like, the astral projection of Doctor Strange starts pulling himself out of the book, and he needs Reed to speak an incantation, and, like, he does... And Doctor Strange comes out and is like, "Wow, you've done like well for your first spell, not knowing anything." And he's like, "What?"
He says, "Your voice isn't sound waves."
Yeah.
Like how does this work scientifically? It's like, has no one ever talked to him through his telepathy before?
Yeah, that's kind of a stretch. I will say though one thing. I will say one thing I like about the story. It brings a lot. Like it has a lot of familiar elements for if you read a lot of Marvel comics. It's like familiar but used in a new way, because there was a Fantastic Four story where Doctor Strange had to show up with his astral projection to save the Fantastic Four just through like giving them advice and stuff. And there was this whole story echoes another Fantastic Four story called Doomsday, where Doctor Doom got the powers of the Silver Surfer. And it's very reminiscent of that story in a lot of ways, especially in how it concludes, but it feels like a very much trying to be not definitive, like the prototypical Doctor Doom versus Reed Richards story, where it's at the end of the day, it's Reed has to figure out something about Doctor Doom, who seems unstoppable, And and here it's pretty much the exact same idea. So if you don't know these characters, you'll read the story and you'll get this relationship perfectly just through the story.
Yeah.
And so basically, Strange says, I'll help teach you how to, like, use magic and stuff, and hopefully we'll be able to stop them. And first we need to, like, teleport you out of here so you can free my body, because I'm, like, obviously I could probably beat Doom.
Yeah, he's being humped by Ems at the moment.
So he teleports, Reed speaks an incantation, and he teleports, and he accidentally, like, teleports into the street and gets hit by a car. And Reed starts yelling at Doctor Strange's, like, projection, which no one else, like, everyone around him just thinks he's being, like, a jerk and crazy.
You also forgot when he's trying to teach him spells before they teleport. He, like, Reed Richards can't do it because he's like, it's like a formula, and he's like, no, it's not science.
Yeah.
And he's like, but it's the symmetrical exactitude to the hand gesture. He's like, nope, this is not science. Remember, this is magic, not science.
Yep.
And it's classic New York because he teleports to these guys, and they're like, "Are you okay?" Then he yells at Doctor Strange, and they're all like, "Yeah, fuck you too, buddy."
Yeah.
And he was
I'm walking
he was
here.
supposed to teleport into Doctor Strange's lair, but he's still not, like, getting and understanding what he needs to do.
He really struggles with the magic thing somehow because, like, he keeps trying to read it, but you're like, no, you have to read it, but not care about if it's exact or not. Like, you have to
feel
believe.
it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And also, Dr. Doom makes a comment to Valeria, the baby, that I'm going to wear Reed Richards' skin. That was like,
God, Valeria, Valeria must be fucked up in the fucking head.
Hopefully she doesn't remember this.
Doesn't matter. That stuff, I think, forms you anyway.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think he's trying to, like, free them.
Yeah.
And he casts a spell, and then Doom suddenly knows that, like, Reed's out, and that he figures out that Strange is helping him.
Yeah. In Marvel, can you just just chant things and the spell happens like that? Like he's doing, for someone who's never done magic and doesn't believe in it, he does pretty powerful magic just by, like, reading a book really quick.
Maybe. I don't know.
Well, it's like not going the way he wants it to.
It's zapping people across the world.
The more weird thing is that what he gets later on. Doctor Strange gets taken out by Doom as Doom steps on Doctor Strange's body, and he gets a trinket that gives him magic words, and, like, just by saying magic words, it does effects.
Yeah, so this was the weird part, and this is when I was rereading this where I was like, I wish there was a better solution to this, because Strange gives him a talisman, and he says, you just need to have the magic words. So Reed's like, magic words, Alakazam, abracadabra, and he's like, come on, operate, do something, I can't make it function. Then he goes, I'm an idiot, and it suddenly operates and, like, fires off a bullet. So
and that's the magic words. Him saying I'm an idiot.
yeah, so Doom shows up to fight him, and Reed just starts blasting him with this thing, basically being like, I don't understand anything. You're right. Like, I'm stupid. I can't get I don't know.
It's a slide trinket.
I was just about to say it's a slide trinket. Yeah, I'm a fucking asshole, and it just powers up.
Meanwhile, Doctor Doom teleported to, like, Times Square and is hunting Reed Richards, and some guy is like, "Hey, get out of the road, asshole!" And he turns him into a giant slug monster.
Yeah. And he says, because he's holding Valeria, and he's like, pay them no mind, they are not your future, Doom is. And so they fight in the town, and, like, the rest of the Fantastic Four...
rest of the Fantastic Four to his location.
He frees all of them by just saying he's an asshole. Over and over.
Yeah.
They join in, and they start, like, clobbering him, and beating him up, and burning him.
That's one of the weaknesses of the story is, like, the whole magic trinket thing is mostly just to set up so they have a big fight, because it's not crucial to the finale of the story, really. The magic, I guess it is crucial for the thematic of Reed's thematic development, but, like, having this trinket that says I'm a piece of shit.
See, I was thinking in the reverse that this is, like, the Deus Ex Machina device where it's like, here's something where as long as you say you're stupid, it'll shoot lasers that destroy magic. And
it's so core to this, like, idea. Like, he's like, I just have to, every time I think about how I was wrong and I magic is real, and I can have power. It's like literally the core conflict between science and magic. It's like every time he gives in, it makes him win.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know what to call it, but basically it's like a plot device to make him realize a character moment rather than being a clever way to resolve the plot. Because there is a clever way to resolve the plot, like using Doom's arrogance against himself.
Which happens at the very end, like, after they're fighting, and Reed, like, even with a fake, like, a metal piece barring his mouth, he's able to think that I don't know everything and still blast Doom into this house. And at the end, I think it's Doctor Strange's house. Because they were looking at, like, the demons there.
Yeah.
Because Doctor Strange was talking about how Franklin's held by these demons that gave Doom the power. And so they go into the house, And Reed says, like, you don't even have this power. This power isn't yours or anything. This was given to you by someone else. And he's like, ha! Doom is indebted to no one.
He says unthinkable.
And so Reed throws him the stuff where, like, the little window into the demons, and they can see through it. So they're like, oh, really? Like, you're not indebted to us. So then they grab him and drag him into hell. And Johnny flies in real quick, and they're able to grab Franklin out.
And Doctor Strange.
Oh yeah, Doctor Strange got sent to hell. That's right.
Yeah.
Yep, and they all escape, but before they do that, Doom pretty much touches Reed's face and gives him like this really horrific, ugly scar.
Yeah.
It looks like his face is melting. As like a
because he says, Reed Richards says, I'm gonna spend the rest of my life forgetting you, and he's like, my sweet prince, he touches his face. He's like, no, you won't.
Yeah, he says, think again.
Yeah, because
that's why
I'm sorry, I should have listened to you. I made a mistake. And Reed's like, you're lying. And he's like, oh yeah, fuck you.
and that's why I was comparing this to Doomsday, because Doomsday was he just thinks about the source of Doctor Doom's powers being the Silver Surfer's cosmic magic versus his actual magic in this story, and he thinks about the source of his powers and uses that against Doctor Doom. And here he does the same way, because Doctor Doom's source of powers here is these 3 demons. So, like, in the end, it's really Doom's arrogance that does him in, so does that cheapen the little trinket that makes him realize I'm dumb?
No, I thought the trinket itself was dumb. I was like, this is a cool way to do it, because you're using an established thing that was made a while ago, where it's like, Doom's like, these demons gave me power, but I don't care about them. And this is turning the demons against him to be like, well, you know.
That's cool.
That's why I felt. That's why I felt I didn't like the trinket. I felt like
I didn't.
I didn't either.
I agree. I felt like the whole resolution of the science versus magic thing. Like, not only was it irking me from the very first issue, the way they frame it, but like it doesn't even resolve in like a meaningful way for me.
No.
Like, does he really believe in magic now, or is he just like, he calls himself an asshole over and over, and like he gets to clobber Doom a little?
My thoughts on that depend more on like what happens next with Reed. I don't know. Does Reed become more magic?
It's not that he becomes more magic, but this is
less magic racist. I don't know what you'll call it.
This is he doesn't get more magic, but this whole run.
I don't expect more magic, but more like I'm not as arrogant about science.
Open-minded.
Yeah, well, this begins the long development of humbling Reed more that he goes through for the next, like, 15 years in Marvel.
Reed was a character, we should clarify, Reed was a character that was always right, never wrong, through most of his existence.
Yeah.
Until, like,
because I really wish we had enough time to do the next 2 issues are interesting, because it's about Franklin being traumatized by going to hell. Like, he has to see a therapist. his mom takes him out, like, to a boardwalk, and he doesn't want to talk to, like, anyone, and he ends up freaking out when, like, there's people surrounding them and crowding them, because they're like, oh, Fantastic Four, can you give me a signature? And it's because he sees everyone else's demons. And that story, it's like a 2-parter, is about coming to terms with that parents can't protect their kids from everything, even if they want to try.
That's interesting.
That's what I really enjoy about Waid's stuff. It's not just like, well, now after going to hell, like, how are you doing, Franklin, and all this stuff. It's like, it does, like, scar these people. And after this, Reed he starts to, like, lose his mind, and he decides to take over Latveria in Doom's place, since he's in hell now.
I think that's an interesting idea, but I feel like once you go down that path, like, most people in comics, video games, all media actually would not, like, no one would mentally be able to handle the stuff that they do. Mm-hmm. Like, wouldn't they all have PTSD and be in therapy for the rest of their lives?
Well, yeah, that's why it has to, like, at the end of the issue, it explores the idea, but it resolves with a, like, oh, I'm healing from this, and I'll be, like, fine, so that this can be completely forgotten in a year, kind of a thing. Because it's comics.
That's the interesting thing, is a lot of times comics do touch upon realistic human emotions, but at the end of the day, even the way they handle those emotions are superhuman in a sense, because like no one, like, think about how much PTSD you get just by going to Iraq or something like that, and like how that'll affect your life forever. If you have to fight demons on a regular basis, if you've not fought demons, galactic overlords, fucking like Inhumans from from
people that torture you forever, kind of a deal.
Yeah. Like, that's not one of those things that you're like, give me one hour a week of therapy, I'll be good in a year.
Yeah.
It's like,
and it also does, like, a cool thing in the next issue where Johnny's like, hey, let's try and do this. They take a time machine. He's like, want to go back in time and shoot Dr. Doom so this never happens to your family?
It'll be interesting if like that was a common thing in comics, if they acknowledge that everyone has a therapist like all the time, because that's the thing like people in real life have. If you're an actor or a comedian, like most of them have, like 70% of comedians I think have therapists. Like I think like 100% of superiors should have a therapist probably.
Yeah.
Mark Waid actually explores trauma and dealing with it like often in his work, because like his Flash run deals a lot with it. His Daredevil run is all about like Matt's mental illnesses.
And my favorite, irredeemable about Superman that goes insane and kills people is about that. It's like, how much can you deal with until you snap?
The problem is there's not as many writers that are as good as Mark Waid as there should be.
Yeah. So did you guys enjoy this? Would you read more?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I've read Wade's Fantastic Four like 3 times, so yes.
Yeah, and I read more. I actually read this on a whim because when we read the Fantastic Four story for the Stan Lee, this is what made me go and read it, because I'm like, I kind of wanted to see if this holds up, and it did. I was happy.
There were things about it that like irked me here and there, and like it wasn't my favorite thing I've ever read, but I enjoyed it, and there were a lot of things I really liked about it. Like I thought the whole first issue where he's like he wears her skin at the end, I'm like, I did not see that coming. The hell stuff I thought was interesting, switching their powers and
it has good twists, and I think it has the story has very good momentum. You want to see what happens next, especially when Doom is torturing them, and you want.
And the magic's cool. Like I said, I like the teleportation. I like using the kid as a familiar and like looking through her eyes. That there's a lot of really cool ideas in it.
Yep.
Cool. So join our Facebook group, Oops, I Talk Divisive Issues, or our Discord, links in the show notes, or the Flying Machine Network Facebook group, and it's Flying Machine Explorers Guild, and let us know. And I also want to plug Stranger Still this week. They did 2 recent episodes that I really liked. One about summer blockbusters and like why they started, and the one before that was about Hollow Earth, one of my favorite theories that makes no sense at all. And that was really fun, so definitely check those out.
I heard that's more logical than Flat Earth.
It is.
Technically, yes. But
ask Andrew Jackson. He'll back me up.
Yeah, that's who you want in your corner, Andrew Jackson.
Yeah, you know what? He'll kick your ass.
And you guys have been doing a thing, right? You should talk about it.
Oh yeah, we're doing RPG crits. We're doing Twitch streams right now we're doing it every 2 weeks. We have no set schedule, just whenever we have free time. But if you want to check out our Twitch channel, it's going to change, so I'm not going to give you it, but we're going to change it like a month or two.
It's a secret. Send us an email what you think it is.
Just go to the Facebook chat and you'll see us post.
We do NES D&D games right now, and we're going to continue doing other RPGs just to see how different games handle, the tabletop mechanics we all love.
Yeah, we're going to analyze just RPG mechanics, we're gonna, like how they compare to different video games. The first 2 we've done are action RPGs, and Darryl does a lot of great insight because he's a video game guy about how video games force you to interact with their enemies, about how having no patterns makes the game very dull, and those are ideas.
Yeah, I'm the one name dropping things now. Where I'm like, Legend of Zelda 2.
Yeah,
Adventure Link.
No one's ever heard of that before.
Yeah,
I've beaten that
it's
game.
Obscure titles.
Even I've played that.
Yeah, sure, Ryan. I believe you on anything you beat anymore.
You beat Punch-Out, right?
I actually beat Zelda 2.
Lies.
Yeah.
God, that last maze is so fucking hard, though. But whatever. It's besides the point. Okay.
Oh, yeah, so the Twitch channel will be called RPG Crits, but not if you're listening to this immediately after, because it takes months to reset your name. And I just recently changed it.
Okay. So it will be RPG Crits.
Yes.
Cool.
Good plug.
Oh, yeah, thank you all for listening. I've been a fucking asshole. I've been a piece of shit. I hope my magic powers are working now.
I've been the flesh that makes up Darryl's armor.
I can't understand any of this.
Stank continuity.